This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 1015 FM. Good morning, Arnie Sherman.
It's a cold morning, Scott.
It is.
You know, all of this Arctic vortex is already, permeating the air around here in Montana.
Right.
This is one of the few places outside of, polar bears and penguins in Alaska. This is one of the few places that when it gets cold and snowy and icy, people like it.
Yeah.
They enjoy it. They get excited about it.
Everybody else, it.
I don't like it at all.
You're in Montana.
I know. I don't know what the...
We're not in Florida.
It's like being in the witness protection program. I got stuck in this kind of weather in the winter, and it's an early winter.
Right.
We're early, and the holiday music is out there, and it's we're not even halfway through December, and I'm already had it with all of this.
Okay.
But you know what it does? It gives me a deja vu of sitting around as a kid during the holiday season and watching all of the specials, the holiday specials. Dean Martin and Perry Como and Andy Williams and all these guys had these holiday specials where they would say, the weather outside is frightful and let it snow.
Right.
So I was thinking of a song that might tie in with our guest today. So I think you'll find this rather clever, this connection. I'm going to try to sing a couple of lines of the song without my normal band, without my musicians and set piece here. But I think this ties in very well, and it reminds me of those long days of old where you used to sit around and watch those family TV shows.
Okay, folks, this is a first.
Yeah, first.
Okay, drum roll.
Ready,
timpani.
Let's go. For somebody who can't sing, we're going to try to do this. Okay.
A drum roll, please, for first on What Do You Know, brought to us by our great partner, Don Maddox, Glacier Sotheby's International Realty. Okay, she's sponsoring this song.
She's going to sponsor me singing on the air. Very poorly.
Thank you, Dawn.
Okay, so just the beginning of it.
Okay.
So, let's take a boat to Bermuda. Let's take a plane to St. Paul. Let's grab a kayak to Quincy or Nyack. Let's get away from it all. Don't you think that's a good lead into our show?
Wait,
What's
going,
interesting about
going.
Well, let's take a trip in a trailer. No need to come back at all. Let's take a powder to Boston for chowder. Let's get away from it all. So why that is
very good, ladies and gentlemen.
Why that's very appropriate is in twofold. One is because our guest today, Brian Morgan from Adventure Life, is going to talk about travel globally. His company has a very interesting market niche of doing sustainable travel and authentic travel trips and off the beaten path kind of thing. And
yes.
We're going to find out about what nowadays is considered off the beaten path and where are the hot locations to go to.
Yes.
But what's funny is that song, Let's Get Away From It All, written in the 40s, talked about getting away by going to St. Paul.
St. Paul.
Nyack, New York.
Right.
Quincy, Massachusetts. I mean, that was getting away from it all. Not that long ago. That was considered, a big, exciting vacation.
Would Havre, Montana be away from it all?
That's
where Brian's
go to
from.
Great Falls. I mean, it's really a major mental shift from considering.
Oh, totally. Well, air travel.
Yeah, well,
rails.
Well, there was even air travel, but people's spirit of adventure.
Yes.
Used to buy books to read about people going to Hawaii, like Mark Twain.
Right.
But now it's nothing. Even for Missoula. Missoula is one of the most well-traveled small towns in America. Everybody here goes, takes long trips,
right?
Interesting trips.
Okay.
I mean, I think Brian's leaving for Indonesia tomorrow. So, I mean, it's sort of an interesting change over, one or two generations, a very short period of time from talking about going to Niagara Falls as a big exotic trip to now, going around the world.
And he specializes in that.
Right. He specializes in putting together trips to interesting parts of the world. And not only off the beaten track, but customized trips, that meet individual appetites for adventure or for being exotic. You can't hardly think of a place. I'm sure he has some trips that we have never contemplated. But, I'm pretty well traveled. I've been to, Mongolia. I've been to the Stan Republics. I've been to South Africa. I've been to a lot of parts of the world.
Right.
And I still have childhood friends who have never left the Bronx, right? Or, who grew up in Chicago and have never left Chicago. Maybe they've gone up to Milwaukee for a sporting event. But the world has become a very small place now with travel and the internet, being able to organize and book trips and find companies like, Adventure Life that will help you organize something that is just maybe the fulfillment of a childhood fantasy.
Absolutely. And now look, this is a very unique guest, okay? We got to hear his backstory, too, because I know it, you know it.
Right.
Let's share it with our audience.
But our listeners don't know it.
So let's share that with them. But some of the trips most of the trips that he designs are exotic, adventure seeker. It's for adventure seekers who want to go to exotic, off the beaten path places and have once in a lifetime experiences. This is not about going on a Carnival cruise.
Right. And this is a sustainable travel.
Right.
Which means you're out there shooting, giraffes and elephants, and that's a different kind. Yeah.
Have you ever gone on one of his trips?
No. No, I've never gone on one of his trips. I kind of like to craft my own, but he might talk me into one of these organized adventures with a guide. There are some places that I know that you need a guide.
Yeah, totally.
For example, if you're going to go to New York City, you probably need a guide to get you around.
Well,
so I'm anxious to hear about what Brian's going to tell us about hot destinations, in the coming year. What are his favorite places to go? How does he pick his guides? I mean, that would always be an important question for me, right? If I'm going to have someone show me around, I want to know why them,
right?
Why they're the best person to do that.
Well, look, when we come back, our guest will be Brian Morgan, CEO of Adventure Life, right?
Yes.
Travel, and we'll get the official name when we speak to him.
Let's get away from it all.
Exactly. Let's get away from it all. We'll be back right after this with What Do You Know, sponsored in part by Dawn Maddox, Glacier Sotheby's International Realty. You can find her at dawnmaddox.glacier.com. Back after this. Okay, We're back. Okay, we're back. Okay, our guest is Brian Morgan and Arnie Sherman. Inquiring minds want to know.
So, first off, tell us a little bit about what sustainable travel is and what the authentic travel experience that Adventure Life offers. I read your marketing material,
by the way,
and it enticed me. So that's what Inquiring Mind wants to know.
He's a Missoula company.
That's right, a Missoula-based company here.
Well, I am. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, Adventure Life's been in Missoula now for, I think, 18 years. And what is the kind of travel that we offer? The first thing is it's fun. I think that's the first. I think that can be missed a little bit with some of those long jargony words like sustainable travel and authentic travel. So
good point.
The very first thing is it's fun, and the second thing is that we really, it's tailored towards an individual, but it's also tailored towards every locale. So every location that we might send people to, we really like to investigate what is it that makes that place tick? What is it that's so special? And what are the people that live there? What do they think that it makes it so special?
Well, so you're not sending anybody, as we sang earlier, about to Quincy or Nyack.
Well, maybe if occasionally we've had people go up like the St. Louis River or something, but that's about not much really.
Most of our listeners wouldn't know where Nyack is. I mean, unless you grew up back east in upstate New York.
Right.
I barely know.
Right.
So how did a guy who has a degree in English literature and a graduate degree in economics get into this business?
Well, the short of it is I needed a job.
And nobody wanted to hire me.
And no one wanted to hire me. So, I think it's important to know that I'm from Havre, Montana.
Right.
And Havre's
a blue pony.
A blue pony, yep. Havre's a town of 10,000 people, and the next largest town is 2 hours away. So it's really a small town in a rural environment. And it was a great place to grow up. I mean, it was so safe feeling that we got to run like banshees all over the neighborhood and all over town and come back at dark. And that was about the only instructions we had. But as I got into high school and got towards graduation, I felt like there was so much more of the world I wanted to see. I had this nice, safe background, and I felt like I was invincible, and I should go out and see what the world has to offer. So ever since I left school, or left Havre, I've been trying to experience the rest of the world. So in college, I went off to South Carolina for a year. I thought that was kind of a big deal, I guess, for my first...
From Havre, sure.
Yeah, the deep...
Sight unseen, or did you go visit before?
No, sight unseen.
Amazing.
Yeah, I wanted to go... I did a national exchange, so you could pay the same tuition. I was on a budget. And so that was important. And I was choosing between I wanted to go as different as possible from Missoula, from UM. So the option was New York City or the Deep South. And I thought, well, maybe New York City's too much for this little Havre boy. So I'll do the Deep South and South.
Was that too much for you?
The Deep South. I found the Deep South to be the same as the rural South to be very similar to the rural West.
Right.
But
except for grits.
USC is a town of 500,000, and that seemed huge for me. I mean, that was half the state of Montana. So I thought that was a nice sort of introduction.
Right.
And the next year after that, that was just the beginning of, I guess, my wanderlust and trying to satiate that. So the next year I went off to Moscow, Russia. And so we've talked about that a little bit,
sure.
Arnie. And that was the New York City of Russia, I suppose.
Sure. What year was that?
That was fall of 94 to summer of 95.
Right. So Boris, was Yeltsin still running it, or was Putin already there?
Yeltsin was still running it.
Just about ready to be taken out.
Yep. Yeah. And so it was an incredible experience for a 21-year-old kid to be living and moving around Russia for almost a year. So that was, again, the wanderlust, taking place.
So what was the experience in Russia that was the most, unusual compared to your background? I mean, what really stood out to you? I mean, there's lots of things that happened in a year traveling out Russia, but what was the one where you realized this isn't Havre anymore?
Wow. Well, I don't know if I can come up with just one. I mean, there's the knowledge that, someone in my building had been assassinated the year before.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. There's the giant, the massive 50-year anniversary of Victory Day that they held that same year as well. There's having President Clinton come to Moscow while I was there, and I was working at the embassy and working with the Secret Service during his visit. There were so many things.
Yeah, it was a great time to be there.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a historic time to be in Moscow.
At the time, if you had money, there was probably things for you to do. But if you didn't have money, you really had to just focus on
drinking.
on drinking in people's homes.
Yeah, right.
You didn't have anywhere to go. And
people don't realize that even as recently as then. There weren't restaurants, there weren't clubs, there weren't even many movie theaters of any kind that you would want to go see. You went to see the Nutcracker, or you went to the ballet, or you listened to a symphony, and that was it.
I mean, I could go to the Tchaikovsky Conservatory for like $2,
right?
But to go to a club was $50 to get in. And I didn't have that kind of money.
Right.
And then
there weren't very many of them. There were 2 or 3 at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember actually distinctly when I was feeling a little homesick, I would go to the McDonald's and get one of their apple turnovers.
Yes. Yeah, the one on Tverskaya Ulitsa, right?
Yes.
Right by the post office downtown.
Yeah. Yep.
We used to pay kids to wait in line for us at that place. Because when it first opened, the lines would go around the block.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Why? Because Russian food wasn't as good?
Well, they didn't have any fast food. There was no place to eat anything
even
fast.
Slow food.
They didn't. Well, you can't take 2 hours if you want to grab a burger at the end of the day.
And there were no cafes.
No, there was
nothing. The cafes that were there were really designed for like workmen.
Right.
And they'd have maybe soup and something else, and
like
it would be
truck.
dark and that would.
Food truck was very elaborate.
That implies some gourmet level of taste and flavor.
This was a real food truck.
You'd have hot water with something floating in it, and you wouldn't have any idea what it was.
I mean, I remember buying pizza from a kiosk, and it was bread with ketchup on it, and then some kind of cheese put on it. So it was ketchup was the tomato sauce.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of learning going on.
You can't see our face on radio.
But I remember those days.
Yep.
So then you were through that period, and then when did you decide to start adventure life?
Well, after graduating, rather than take a job in my chosen field, and I had a couple offers in the economics arena, I went off to Ecuador and had another 10-month experience there. And then I decided, every time I left Missoula, left Montana, I kept thinking, I want to come back to Montana. And so I thought, well, I could stay in Latin America and I could establish a consulting career here, but in a few years' time, I still want to go home. And I felt like I'd be starting over again there. So I thought, well, let's go back now and see what I can do. So I came back to Missoula, I came back to Missoula. I visited Havre, and I started applying for jobs and waiting for job callbacks. And I wanted to do something interesting. I was at an age where any job wasn't the issue. I wanted to have a job that would really strike me and I could be passionate about or something.
Sure.
And while I was waiting for callbacks, I thought, well, I'm not doing anything. I've been kind of a travel bum for the last year. I need to do something. So I thought, well, maybe I could put together a group of people and they could pay me to show them around Ecuador. So I thought, well, I'd make just enough money to pay my flight back and I could do this as a hobby. Every year I could run a group of people. And so I put together this little itinerary and I had a little bit of savings and I made a little brochure and I printed it up and I thought I went to some travel agencies and they were like, what do you want us to do? And they didn't really want to talk to me. And I went to coffee shops and put up these flyers and that's what I did. And that was kind of the beginning of the concept of adventure life.
And now
It's like music promotion.
Sure. So now move forward.
Well, nobody called me.
But it was your first taste at getting out and promoting,
Yeah.
which is always good. You learn from sometimes when it doesn't work.
So when did you know you really had a business?
Probably, then I started over with a new brochure and a new concept because nobody called me.
Right.
And I thought, I need to have like a few trips going on and I need to have look like I do this once or twice a year. Like I need to look like a business, not just somebody who is doing one trip. And so I did that and I wound up getting another job for a while to pay the bills. And 2 months into that job, I had my first booking and people were calling me and saying, I want to go on different dates and I want to go to Ecuador or Peru, but I want to do this thing, not the thing you're doing. And I decided the only way I could really know if I was going to make it or not was to not do this 40 hours a week, which was what I was doing. I was working my regular job 40 hours a week and doing this 40 hours a week, which was to actually live and breathe it and do it all my time. And so I gave up on that job and did only this. And probably like around June of 1999, I had enough bookings going that I could actually pay to eat on it. So I went beyond savings. And I guess I felt the full commitment to the company, that it was sustainable and that it was a going company, probably 3 years into it.
But Brian, well, that's a pivotal moment because easily you could have said, I'm going to do the job I'm doing right now and I'll come back to this. Mm-hmm. You could have jettisoned the idea. But what was guiding your ideals here? Like what do you think that thing was that said, I'm going to push forward. I have to push forward.
I guess I felt that if I was getting calls and people were asking me for things that I wasn't offering, dates I wasn't prepared to work with because I was going to be the guide. And I just decided that I had to give it everything I had. And
was there a financial opportunity that you were working toward? Like you said, hey, look, if all these come through, this is $30,000 in bookable revenue.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I don't even know if it was quite that when I gave up on the job. It was more of a hope and a prayer when I gave up on the regular full-time job. And the first year, I think I looked at my tax returns the other day because I was getting rid of some old documents. I think I claimed about $2,000 in income the first year.
Huh. Wow.
So I actually made a loss because I was working another job, made $5,000 or something in the few months, offset it. And so I actually lost money the first year. I was living on savings. I lived in a house with 5 other people. My rent was $200 a month. I scabbed off.
You have this is the quintessential, entrepreneurial story. Out of the garage.
We had dial-up then, and one of the roommates had dial-up. So I asked, "Can I use your dial-up sometimes for internet?" So that was what was going on.
How essential was it? How did you build your network? Because I'm imagining a network of providers and suppliers and folks that you need to work with to put together these trips is essential to your product.
Right. Well, and that has changed over the years. But in those early years, I happened to know a guide in Cusco, and I also knew a tour company in Ecuador. This guy that owned a little tiny little travel agency, and then I actually went to Ecuador 2 months before the first trip arrived, the first people arrived. And then I used to go around to the hotels and knock on the door and ask if I could look inside the hotel and check the sheets and check the rooms. And this was before TripAdvisor, and you had basically, you could have lots of people doing this for you, crowdsourcing. I had to go out and check all these things and then decide, yes, I'm going to work with this hotel, or no, I'm not. And then basically people not being efficient enough and me needing to find new people, and you'd open up Lonely Planet guidebooks and call somebody and then try to get an email address, because a lot of companies didn't have websites yet.
Right.
So let's fast forward to now. What's the company look like now?
Well, we're still offering trips, but in the beginning we had our set departures, and so you came and bought that trip from me.
Right.
And now we do so much more as tailor-made. So we're actually you come to us and say, well, I'd like to do this, and we say, well, here's some ideas. What do you think? And then we craft and create these itineraries for you. It's also changed immensely because we're a crew of over 20 of us. There's 23 of us. I've got partners I've now had for 18 years. Some of them now. That they started with one person in their shop, and now they employ 3 or 4, maybe 20 as well if they've got other clients. So the network is so much larger now, and there's so many more moving parts.
And are all those the 20 or so that work with you are based here in Missoula?
Yeah, those people are all based in Missoula. So I think I've got 23 full-time people right now in Missoula.
That's terrific.
Thank you.
Let's do a quick ID. You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO. Our guest is Brian Morgan, CEO of Adventure Life Travel. We are being brought to you in part by Don Maddox, Glacier Sotheby's International Realty.
You alluded to TripAdvisor, so the logical question is, how has Expedia and TripAdvisor and all of those other search engine online vehicles, portals, have affected your business?
Well, that's a great question. Without the internet, we wouldn't exist here.
Right.
So we're a product of the internet and the changes that the internet brought. But at the same time, the internet is a threat. So it's an opportunity and a threat for us.
Sure.
And so we spend a ton of our time paying attention to the changing habits, the changing trends that are happening. And things like Expedia and TripAdvisor have had major impact on us. I have, for example, many people don't realize this, but within my office, there's 2 programmers that we employ, and they're full-time programmers, and they're dealing with finding ways for us to take advantage of and utilize those new tools and competitors that are out there. One of the big changes it's made, though, with our customer base is that people expect more, and they expect it faster. Mm-hmm. And so there's definitely been the need for us to do things faster and do things better for our customers. So that's where we've shifted from saying, here's our tour that we're offering, to what do you want to do? We've got some great ideas, but what do you want to do? And that's been caused, I think, because of the things, TripAdvisors and the Expedias and things like that.
Well, the one obvious competitive advantage that you have, beside your experience, is you have guides. You're somebody often, if not always, goes along with the group.
Right.
And so that's a huge relief to a lot of people who have not traveled to exotic places and want to be sure that they have somebody they can talk to or rely on if something should go awry. If somebody gets sick, which I'm sure has happened, when some reservation doesn't work out or the hotel is closed, or there's a million things that can happen. I've traveled, as you know, to maybe 100 countries, and I've had hundreds of these kinds of experiences.
Sure.
How do you pick your guides, and how do you prepare them to handle emergencies and changing landscapes on a real-time basis?
Sure, and the guides are the key element of what we do, and that's what really sets us apart from the giant OTAs, the online travel agencies like Expedia, because we're not merely processing a transaction, but we're providing an experience, and that experience is provided through the guides and through the whatever possibly the specialized transportation jeeps and river and rafts and things like that go along with that. And Expedia isn't involved in that part yet.
No.
In terms of picking guides, in the beginning, I would actually interview them directly myself. I remember sitting in cafes in Cusco and meeting guides and doing a job interview with them. And one of the questions I remember asking them is, don't tell me what, the Cusco city tour, everybody does the same city tour. Imagine instead you have a friend coming to visit you. What do you want to show them about your city? And those guides that kind of looked at me like, really, you're asking me what I want to show? And then their faces kind of lit up like, I get to kind of direct what I'm going to show off about my city. Those were the guides that we wound up hiring because they had a real passion for their place. And for me, that's a real key element of providing a great experience, is finding people who have a passion for their place to show that off to guests. And so that philosophy of how we select guides has been maintained in all this time. And now the main difference is, instead of sitting in a cafe, as we've expanded and have guides and programs in Asia and Africa and all throughout Latin America, now we often do our interviews via Skype. Mm-hmm. There's a video Skype that will take place, and we manage time zone differences, but it's still the same concept. We obviously want to know about their experiences and their safety training and things of that nature, but we also want to hear whether they have a passion for what they're doing and for hosting guests.
Yeah, well, you get a completely different experience. I remember one time I was in Panama and doing some work in Panama, and I have friends there that are lawyers and government officials, and they would take you to all the places that they thought you would, that they should take you to.
Right.
And then one night, that one of the guys that was with me, we were talking with a bellhop from the hotel who spoke pretty good English, and we said, "What are you doing tonight?" And he said, "Well, I wasn't doing anything." I said, "Why don't you take us out and take us where you would go on a Thursday night in Panama, and we'll pay all your expenses, and we'll do whatever." And the guy thought that was really cool, and he took us. I can tell you for sure that the places he took us, none of the other people there would have ever taken us to those places.
You bet.
And we had a great experience,
and that's and that's where you have an experience versus merely booking a trip.
Exactly.
It's a trip.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How large are the groups that you take on an excursion? How many people, couples?
Well, and that's the concept of the group has changed as well a lot. So we have so many situations where we just have a couple, two people traveling with a guide. And so it really depends on the destination and the specific trip. So if you're doing something that requires specialty transportation, for example, you're going to Antarctica, needs specialty transportation.
And you did that trip like 2 years ago,
Yeah, I've done that twice. Yep.
Right.
Then you need to be on a ship. And we're going to put you on a ship of 100 people approximately. Those are the size of ships we use. So you're going to be with a group, if you will, of 100 people. But if you're going to Machu Picchu and you want to check out the city of Cusco, and you're going to go to the Sacred Valley next door and then on to Machu Picchu, it might just be you and your friends that booked with you.
Really? And the guide?
And the guide, right.
And are there ever, do you have more than one guide on certain excursions? Like backup? Meaning, I don't know, I think of like an emergency situation where a guide gets sick or something happens where you need another guide.
Well, if you're in the backcountry, then that's definitely a concern. And then there's always plenty of support along the way. But if you're in a more urban landscape where, you're a cell phone call away from assistance, then there's no need to have that.
Right. And people, obviously you have an 800 line or something for assistance.
Yeah,
folks.
We've got you've clearly got your local guides have phones and things like that, but we also have a 24-hour emergency number that you can call us at as well.
Sure.
What is the most exotic location that you offer currently?
Have her.
We don't offer that. That might be the most exotic.
Eureka.
Yeah, right.
I think more people go to Eureka, at least from this side of the state.
That you're excited about, because there's a lot of
What are some of the hot destinations now?
Well, Antarctica is a very hot destination.
Why is that?
Pun intended.
Is that because of climate change? People's concerns about seeing it, and maybe it's not going to be the same anymore or something?
I think it's because it's so awesome.
Yeah,
it is so awesome. I mean, I use that word in the sense of awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
To see an iceberg and pass by an iceberg on one of your ships,
cool.
where they're the size bigger than a skyscraper. I mean, and you pass by this thing and you're looking up at it, and it's awe-inspiring. And then the wildlife is so prolific. It's like being in the,
really, most people off the top of the head would think there's maybe not a lot down there. It's all frozen, and you look at it as ice. But you're obviously talking about a different scenario when you actually get down there.
Yes, and I think as more people have visited, I think they tell their friends about it, and that's why it's growing in popularity.
Right.
So
Is it
much.
seasonal, or is it available all year round?
Oh no, it's definitely seasonal.
Right.
Yeah. Our winter time, you can go to Antarctica and you'll still put a winter parka on, but at least you'll also see the penguins and the seals and the whale sightings you can have. It's pretty spectacular.
What's a typical profile of one of your travelers, one of your clients? Are there any? I mean, do they fall into a general range, or are they all over the map?
They are quite a bit all over the map, but if you're talking about this, like the small ship cruises, I would say that. Well, first and foremost, our travelers tend to be very discerning types. So they're people who have traveled a lot already. They want something unique and special to them. And so that's the first thing. And I find that whenever I join larger groups, like on a ship, one of these 50 or 100 passenger ships, that everybody's coming from different places. They're coming from all over parts of the world. They all book through different agencies maybe. But all the travelers on board all share a real thirst for learning about the places they're going to and really experiencing them. So I would say that's the first thing that they have in common. And then, price-wise, well, we have trips that are inexpensive and trips that are very expensive. So it definitely attracts a lot of different kinds of people. But the point is they're all people thirsting to get a way to get deeper into a place.
Is there a trip or an itinerary that someone proposed to you that you couldn't do? That you didn't do or couldn't do or didn't want to do, or you just turned it down?
Yeah, we get those. I mean, there's so much out there. We have people all the time wanting us to offer this or that, and
you just not going to do it.
Sometimes it's in a place that we do have trips and we do have expertise in, and we choose not to do it for whatever reason because it doesn't fit with what we want to offer. And sometimes we don't want to get into something until we really know the destination well. So there's also that element.
Sure.
So I don't have any land programs in Europe right now.
Right.
We have small ship cruises because we have great relationships with those companies. But for me to do land programs well throughout Europe would take a massive amount of research for me to give the quality that I would give somewhere else, and I'm not ready to do.
What kind of research do you? I assume you continue to do research. I mean,
all the time.
CNN Traveler, all these guys have the 20 hot destinations.
Sure.
That changes every week, right? There's always a new list of 20 hot destinations. What is the one that you're asked the most these days? Is there one that stands out the most? Location-wise.
Oh, I mean, people want to do Cuba really badly.
Yeah, that's what I was going to figure.
Yeah.
They want to do the Cuba.
And Cuba's tough right now because they have such limited capacity. And, they're getting the big giant cruise ships coming in right now.
Right, and they can't handle that.
And they can't handle that. And so they're not going to email. They don't really care about this tailor-made travel industry yet. Panama's great. I mean, we have programs in Panama. I've traveled throughout it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
So there is, even with the discerning traveler, they do read and say, they say this year that Sydney, Australia is a hot place to go, and so then they reach out to you and say, can you customize some Australia experience.
Yeah, and if we don't have expertise in that area, we'll tell them we're not the best person to talk to, and we'll try to direct them to other resources, because we really take pride in really knowing our destinations well. So we're not always able to offer the hottest destination, because that would require us to just have one trip to Sydney. And I want to know Sydney before I start
and
offering that to people.
Australia's a tough place because how few people and how big it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Melbourne and Perth and Sydney and Brisbane, and then who knows, and Alice Springs, and then I don't know what the rest of the country is.
Sure.
That's only 5% or 3% of the whole country.
Right.
So it's kind of a hard place to get to really know unless you have some in-depth experience there.
Now we take, for us to launch a new destination, we can spend up to a year doing pretty intensive research on the different programs and who we want to work with, and, interviewing the potential guides, because then, once you make a booking, well, with some hotels and some excursions, well, who's going to offer it? Again, it comes back down to those guides, and we need to have a team of guides that we feel comfortable we can draw on.
Is there a competitor or competitors in your space that are, that you find to be challenging to work against, or are you really a niche in that customized travel space?
Well, all competitors are tough to compete against.
but someone offering what you're offering, like going to that level of unique locations and experiences.
It's a very competitive industry. So I've got the one thing I like about the industry is that it's also, there's a lot of camaraderie within the industry, so that you often you can think of your competitor also as a colleague.
Sure.
So there's definitely many competitors out there. There aren't too many big giant competitors, and that's helpful.
Right, and sometimes
but there are lots of smaller competitors.
You can collaborate because there are places you go and that they don't, and the places they go that you don't.
So true co-opetition.
And but the industry is also becoming, as more and more people are looking for that specialty experience, and it's growing. Some of the changes that we've seen is larger companies starting to dip their toes into things. So, for example, we do compete now in Peru with Disney Vacations.
Really?
And you wouldn't really think of Disney Vacations going to Peru, but they do. And they compete online. They'll compete in the classic pay-per-click arena. And then you see some of the other large companies trying to get into the tailor-made programs.
So how many travelers a year do you handle?
Roughly we have around 3,500 a year.
That's a lot. Substantial.
Yeah.
And is there a source that they come from the most? Is it word of mouth referrals is your number one source of customers, or do they come from some other source?
Probably half of them come from online. So that's primarily Google these days. In the early days, they came from Yahoo and
Bing
MSN and Bing.
Now it's Google. Everybody Googles.
Most of them come from Google now. But the other 50% come from different sources. A lot of referrals, a lot of repeat business. Almost a third of our clients are repeat business or referrals.
And where is your favorite destination personally? I mean, where's the place that you like to go, and every time you go back, you still you don't get tired of it? Is there a place like that for you?
Well, when I travel now for myself personally, I mostly like to go see old friends, because I've made so many friends in the industry. But oftentimes we're moving so fast in the beginning as we're developing the destination. So now I like to just go back and see those friends. So one of my best friends is located in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And so I love going to Argentina, and, he's got a place south of Buenos Aires, and we'll go do a traditional barbecue at his house and roast up some meat and
do that sort of
that kind of thing. So I enjoy going to see my friends now, which I'm lucky to have all over the world.
As a CEO, do you ever guide anymore?
No, I haven't guided in a long time. But my team in here in Missoula, they travel all the time. So we've got somebody that seems like they're on the road all the time, and that's how we kind of keep tabs on what's going on in the different destinations, and so yeah.
So where in the world that you go now is the most logistically challenging? Because some places may be exotic or off the beaten path, but a ship goes there, right, and goes and does it. But is there a place that really is particularly difficult to organize that you go and you have to pay particular attention to the logistics?
For us, in our infrastructure and our process we have in place, I don't find any place is particularly more challenging than another. If we're visiting Asia, then you've got time zone differences, and that becomes a challenge for logistics, because if you need an answer back very, very quickly, it can be challenging to get that. But that's actually more of a problem for do-it-yourselfers who are trying to book trips, because we've done so much research beforehand that we manage to either know the answers already, or the questions are simple enough that we get them answered very quickly. So,
and I assume some of your staff are like counselors, because somebody reaches out to you and says, I haven't really traveled much anywhere, but I was thinking of going to Mongolia. Do you ever couch them or counsel them away from a place that they think they want to go, because what they're looking for there doesn't really exist?
I mean, you bet. I mean, anybody that's working in service, in offering services and sales, has to first ask their customer, what are you looking for and what are your expectations?
Right.
And they need to be able to listen well. If they can't do that, they're not going to be able to provide the right services for their clients. So yeah, we definitely are doing that all the time, and we have a lot of training in place and that's ongoing so that our agents know how to listen and know how to guide the customer to the right program for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And you customize in a way that, for example, if somebody's going to China and they say, I want to go to Shenzhen and I want to stay at the Ritz-Carlton, you would be able to incorporate that into their travel plans. You wouldn't say, don't stay at the Ritz-Carlton and you got to stay at this other hotel.
Yeah, we can definitely incorporate that into them. So if you've got a favorite hotel chain or something that you really want to visit, we have people also who will go to a place and say, I want to do this trip in China, and in the middle of it, I want to go somewhere because I have friends. Maybe it was through an exchange or a professional exchange or something, and just do 3 days in there. I don't need your services, and we'll have no problem getting them there.
So it's that
and then picking them back
That's
up
really
3
good.
days later and continuing onward. You bet. You bet.
All right, let's take a quick break. You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO. Our guest is the CEO of Adventure Life Travel, Brian Morgan, and we'll be back right after this. All right, we're back.
So, Brian, you are a global company with 3,500 travelers, and you're based in little old Missoula, Montana. So what are the pros and cons of being in a town like this for your business?
Well, first of all, the biggest pro is that I love Missoula, and Missoula is just an incredible lifestyle. So that's the first pro. The second pro is the people that I can hire here. We have access to just some great talent here in Missoula.
Come from the university, some of them?
Yeah, many come from the university. Others have just decided that they want to live in a smaller town. They want to live in a mountain town like Missoula. We've had a few hires recently like that. And what I need the most is I need people who are great communicators and who can problem solve on their own. That's what I need the most within my industry.
Nope.
And those people, we have such a deep pool of those kind of people here in Missoula. So I'm very fortunate in that I can hire people and they stay working for me for a long time. Many of my competitors in different places like Seattle, San Francisco, New York
have high turnover.
They have high turnover, except at the management level, they have high turnover. I've had trip planners with me one trip planner's been with me for 14 years, I think.
That's tremendous.
A couple other trip planners have been 5 and 8 years time periods. So, this is a big advantage for us.
Where do most of the 3,500 a year of your customers' travelers come from? They're not all coming from Montana.
No, and they come from all over the country and partially all over the world as well. So we probably get 0.5% of our customers from Montana. We would love to see it to be more, but the rest of them tend to come from more urban areas, places where there's more money available, so people value the kind of service we have, and just where more people are.
Sure.
So we also have international business, and that ranges from Canada is the most common place.
Right.
But we also have business that comes from Singapore and South Africa and the UK. So we get customers that contact us from a lot of places.
Can local folks come and visit your offices? How do they get a hold of you?
Well, yes, absolutely. Local folks can come and visit us. In fact, we love it when people walk through our door and want to travel with us because we spend so much time talking on the telephone with our customers and never actually we create great relationships over the phone with people. But when we can actually have somebody come in who's a local person here who we may share some acquaintances, that's a great thing. In fact, we get so excited that like we put out treats for them. And, I mean, it's a really rare event.
It's like, oh look,
treats.
Look, the customers are here. So how do we reach you?
Yeah.
How do we find you?
Well, we are located on Spruce Street, not far from St. Pat's Hospital.
Right.
And so that address is 712 West Spruce Street.
Good. And then on the internet, on the web, how do people find you? What's your connection there?
That is adventurelife.com, all one word. So that's the easiest place to find us right there.
And they can reach out to you from that.
Yeah, and he does an amazing job. He's got a great brand. It's a great Missoula company that reaches the world. We're proud of him, right? Because this is great. Think about it. Missoula is a place to come to work and live, not necessarily in that order, live and work.
Right.
And so you got
let's
that balance
take
right.
a boat to Bermuda.
Exactly.
Let's take a plane to St. Paul.
He's going to sing. Okay.
No, we're done with that.
All right. Well,
Brian, you've been a terrific guest.
Yeah.
This has been
Thank you,
a
Arnie.
very energizing conversation.
Thank you, Brian.
Given the weather around here, I'm ready for a trip. We'll have to
love
talk
to the family.
afterwards.
He's got a
That
little one
sounds
at home,
great.
by the
I
way.
know, he
Are you
does.
traveling as much? Are you
He's
able?
heading to Germany.
Really?
Yes.
With your child?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my wife hasn't seen her sister for almost 2 years, so we're going to meet them there.
Wonderful. Well, that's enough of a motivation to get out of the house and to go to China.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Or whatever. Thank you very much. We'll see you later.
Thanks,
Arnie,
Brian.
I'll
It's
see you
been a
next week.
pleasure. Scott, see you next week.
Okay. Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichmond@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290, 1015 FM, and newstalkkgvo.com.